Welcome to Tea with Tanya. I'm your host, Tanya Ambrose, an average millennial navigating life as a maternal health professional, nonprofit founder, and grad student. Join me in the tea tasting room where we spill the tea on finding balance and promoting positive living while doing it all. Hey friend, welcome back to another episode of Tea with Tanya. I am happy to have you here with me. I'm happy for us to meet once again so that we can continue to work on ourselves and try to promote positive living while balancing it all. Today's episode is one that I'm looking forward to because it's all about cycle syncing, and I'm joined today by Samantha Denäe, our holistic health practitioner, the womb healer, or the womb whisperer as she refers to herself. And on today's episode, we're going to be talking about cycle syncing. That's something that I've been doing on and off, and something that I want you, my friend, to try so that we can be in tune with our bodies as we're on this health and wellness journey. This week, I think I'm in week 3 of my second semester of my MPH program. And so far, I think that I am getting the hang of it, to be honest. I will say, going to school online, because I do have one class that's in person that I got to be there physically. And then there's another class that I got to be online on Zoom every Thursday afternoon from like 4:25 to about 7 p.m. And my attention span is, it's getting there. But if you know me, my attention span is like a child. Sometimes after 5-10 minutes, if you're not pulling me in, I'm going to be zoning out. But so far, I've been doing pretty good. This class that I meet every Thursday from 4:30 to 7, it's a health economics class. And I'm going to be honest, I can already tell, and I hate essentially speaking negativity over my life per se, but this class, I don't think it's negative though, but this class is going to be one of my challenging class this semester. Last semester, it was quantitative practice 1. Now I'm taking the second part. I got the gist of it, but this health economics class is it's throwing me for a loop, honey. And I posted a story on my Instagram, and some of my public health brothers and sisters can attest that it's the same thing with them as well. So I don't feel too bad. But what I've been doing is really making the effort to work on my time management. I finally got my passion planner. So I've been using that to help me stay afloat, keep me informed so I can know what's going on in my week. I usually like to sit down on a Sunday, of course, decorate, because I'm not one of those planner people who just gonna write and keep it moving. I gotta get my washi tape, my different color pens, all that jazz. Sit down behind my table with a nice cup of tea, whatever that choice may be, and I'm gonna start writing out my week. And of course, I try to go from my top priorities to not so much of a priority. If it doesn't get done that day, I'm not gonna lose my mind. And then the other part of my task is if you can, or if I can get to them, then I get to them. But definitely want to list it out with your priority. So that's what I've been up to. So far, I'm loving my maternal and childhood class, which is ironically taught by my academic mentor or my life mentor. At this point, I told her, I said, you're not going to get rid of me even when I graduate, because you're just, I love you. You are an amazing woman, and I want to be like you at this point in time. So I'm going to give a shout out to my professor, Dr. Billings. But definitely, that's what I've been up to the last couple of weeks, trying to get back into the swing of things, making sure that I'm going for my goals, locking in, focusing on the goals for my nonprofit and even for this podcast as well. So I'm happy you're here in the tea tasting room, but I already gave you the little tea of my life. So today's tea, let me give you the other tea that we're going to be sipping on. It's going to be cinnamon tea. Let me just tell you, this is the first time I've tried this. I'm not going to lie to you. Have I poured cinnamon in any of my teas before? Yes. But actual cinnamon tea, a friend of mine put me onto it because I was just talking about being too bloated and I just don't like it. And apparently cinnamon tea helps with bloating. It's very, very easy to make. Literally what you're doing, because I'm sure you have cinnamon in your pantry. At least you probably do have. If you're not, then you can go get it. If not, I'll tell you. But it's literally very, very easy to make. So some homemade cinnamon tea is for bloating. So help release bloating. And all you need is just some simple hot water, and you mix it with some ground cinnamon, or you can use cinnamon sticks as well if you want. And you want to steam that for 10 to 15 minutes. And there you go. For me, I did add a little honey because the idea of me drinking cinnamon water, my brain was not registering. So I did add a little bit of honey to give it some taste and Yeah, I might try. I might try to incorporate it into my nightly or morning tea routine. So I will see definitely, but it helps with bloating, and that's what I'm primarily doing for that this week. Because let me tell you, I am super bloated. I have no business being this bloated. I don't know what's going on, but that's why we go and get checked to see what's happening or what's causing that. But nevertheless, so that's today's tea of the week. It's cinnamon tea. If you haven't heard about it, give it a try. It's literally hot water and cinnamon, letting it sit for 10 to 15 minutes, and then you drink it. But for me, I did add a little honey for taste. And for our affirmation of the week, because if you can tell by the title, we're talking about cycle syncing. We even got into how we even hold traumas in our womb as well. So I did like that part of the conversation as well. Samantha was a joy to talk to. But today's affirmation is I live in harmony with my cycle. And I chose that because essentially sometimes some of us who menstruate, we look at our periods as the worst thing to happen. We'd be all dramatic. Oh, here goes my period again. Oh, I'm not pregnant. So many different things. But I want first to affirm that all periods is a normal way. If you menstruate, period is a normal way of life. So I definitely, today's affirmation for you is I live in harmony with my cycle. Now let's get into today's episode. All right. Well, welcome to the tea tasting room to a very special person. And I know, yes, I said this about all my guests, but like I always tell you, whenever someone can take the time to give me their time, it's always a blessing and they're going to always be special to me. So I'm happy to have Samantha, who I met on social media. You guys, I guess by now can tell that all my guests come from social media. So for me, I like to say that social media can be good and bad. You know, it has its ups and downs, but for the most part, for me, it's always up. And I'm very excited to talk to today's guest. And like we do here, I'm going to have her introduce herself, tell us everything, give us the tea about herself, and then we'll get into today's episode. So hi, Samantha. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well.
I'm good. Can't complain. I'm happy to be talking to you. I feel like I dreamt about this interview, to be honest. Even before I sent you any sort of questions or even asking you, I'm like, okay, how am I going to approach this queen? Because, you know, from what I see on the timeline, you are the queen. So I'm just so happy. I often get intimidated when it comes to asking some people who I think, you know, just amazing. So I'm just happy that you didn't even hesitate to say yes. So I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you for reaching out. I love to come and talk about anything womb related.
Yes, I love it. So tell us about yourself.
Well, for everyone who is not familiar with me, I am Samantha Denäe. I am a certified holistic health practitioner. I'm also known as the Endo Educator on social media platforms. I am a endometriosis advocate. I'm an educator as well as a survivor. I have a holistic healthcare business where I create womb detox capsules as well as other herbal capsules for the womb. And I also have womb services such as yoni steaming, womb consultations, womb Reiki and massages, as well as other energy release practices that I conduct. I am a pole enthusiast. I am a sacral chakra enthusiast. And in my free time, I go to high schools in the Atlanta area and I teach about period health care and reproductive disorders and diseases and how to advocate for yourselves when you're going to the doctors and you're inquiring about reproductive issues. So that's me in a nutshell.
I love it. I love it. And I think we're in alignment because I have a nonprofit organization that provides education when it comes to menstruation and women's health because it is needed. And it's oftentimes a conversation that we don't tend to talk about. For some reason, the natural way of living is still a stigma or we should be ashamed to have these conversations. And that's why I kind of started the podcast to have conversations that we don't typically have out in the open. Maybe with a friend that's close by, but not typically in the open. And that's part of working toward destigmatizing that particular topic. But we're here to talk about cycle syncing and when it comes to our menstrual health, because again, I want you to talk to me like I'm a dummy when it comes to cycle syncing. Because for me, found myself doing cycle syncing, but I fell off the wagon and then here we are now because I didn't necessarily be consistent or I didn't quite know, even though I did my research about, okay, what food should I be eating? How should I be moving my body during the different cycles or phases of my menstrual cycle? I still think that, again, the lack of education on me not applying certain things, because in my mind, I know it all and I don't. But for the listeners here thinking, because I think I've been seeing cycle syncing become more popular now on social media. And I'm often very skeptical when it comes to certain topics because, again, whenever a topic surrounding women's health becomes popular, there's always some sort of misinformation in between the posts that we see on social media. So for those of us who don't necessarily know, what the hell am I even saying? What is cycle syncing and how does it even relate to our menstrual cycle or even our health as women or menstruators?
Menstrual cycle is basically where you tailor your lifestyle and your routines in your life around your menstrual cycle. And a lot of people don't really realize the difference between your menstrual cycle and your period. A lot of people think your period is your menstrual cycle, and your period is a phase within your menstrual cycle. So it's just you doing things, in a nutshell, it's you doing things to kind of help regulate your hormones through cycling through your menstrual cycle. So think of routines where it comes to exercise. Think of routines when it comes to your diet and eating habits, even when it comes to your sexual lifestyle. All of those are incorporated in how you can best regulate your hormones so that way you can have a more energetic life. A lot of times we are so tired when it comes to dealing with all of these hormones. You know, we only get about one good week.
I always say that. I say we, as menstruators, we have one good week, and sometimes even in that week, it may not even be a full week where we're fully functional or fully normal. So I'm glad you said that.
Yes, we get about one good week of just normal activities where sleep is normal, your emotions are regulated. You feel like you can just go and do and be whatever you want to do and be until you crash again. And that's how the menstrual cycle goes. So this is to help you boost your energy and kind of give you a better sense of a quality of life when it comes to dealing with your menstrual cycle, especially if you have reproductive issues.
So I want to talk about the phases of the menstrual cycle. For someone listening, like I said, talk to me like you're educating me about the phases of our menstrual cycle, because you said something earlier about the difference between our cycle and our period and our menstrual cycle. So talk to me about the different phases of our menstrual cycle for those who don't know. Because I can tell you, growing up, especially where I grew up sometimes, we just heard about you had a period, you're going to bleed 4 to 7 days. This is how you put on a pad and keep it moving, or don't get pregnant. That's usually from that from that cultural standpoint. But it wasn't until I started doing research when it came to my nonprofit, I knew, okay, there are 4 phases in our menstrual cycle. And of course, I started discovering other reproductive health issues as well. So for those listening who don't know what are the phases of our menstrual cycle, could you just tell us about that and how it impacts our bodies and our emotions? Because let me tell you, again, we only have that one good week. It's hard. So what are the different phases and how does it impact our bodies and our emotions?
So there are 4 phases of the menstrual cycle. Your period is not your menstrual cycle, but your period is the first phase of your menstrual cycle. So we go through a month-long cycle, usually about 28 days. That's about the normal length of a menstrual cycle. There's a month-long cycle where we have 4 phases for each week, basically. And so your period is the first phase of your menstrual cycle. And everybody knows during your period, when we're menstruating, it's when our lining is shedding. We're tired. We are anxious. Sometimes we're sick. Our emotions are up and down, just depending on if you experience PMS or if you have PMDD. Like, it just depends on how your emotions are exasperated when it comes to your period. But that everybody knows that's just the time where we don't want to be bothered. But that is usually typically day 1 through 5 of the menstrual cycle. Now, while you're having your period phase, you're also having your follicular phase of your menstrual cycle, and that lasts from 1 to like 13 or 14 days of the menstrual cycle. And during that phase, after your period has ended, it's when you're starting to feel, you're still a little tired, but you're kind of starting to feel like yourself. But it's when the egg is getting ready to kind of get ready to go into the ovulatory phase. It's prepping itself, so to speak, for pregnancy if it were to happen. During those 14 days, you're tired, you're exhausted, your emotions are up and down, but that's because it's coinciding with your period. And then once that's over, the hormones are starting to regulate again, and you're starting to feel more like yourself. And then we get into the ovulation phase, and that is day 14 of your menstrual cycle. And it lasts for a day. And ovulation can go 1 or 2 ways, I feel like, depending on who you are, because some women enjoy ovulation for the feeling, because during ovulation, we feel a little bit more confident. We feel a little bit more sexy. We're a little bit more sexual, a little bit more free. But some people during the ovulation phase have ovulation pain, and that is no fun. And when they have ovulation pains, it's like sharp pains, kind of mimicking your period almost. And some people are nauseous during ovulation pain. And so it's not really fun for them. After your ovulation phase, we go into your luteal phase. And that is from day 14 up until 28. And during that phase, depending on if you get pregnant or not during your ovulation phase, which is where you are, where your chances of becoming pregnant is more highly increased during ovulation. But during your luteal phase, the last phase of your menstrual cycle, depending upon if you get pregnant or not, will depend on if the menstrual cycle will start over again and back into your period phase. So this is where your progesterone levels will start to decrease a little bit. They'll start to decrease if you do not get pregnant, as well as your estrogen. But if you do become pregnant, you don't go back into your menstrual cycle, because then you'll start to go into pregnancy. But when it comes to emotions, you're tired. Usually that's around the time where your body is starting, energy-wise, it's starting to get a little low. Because your period is about to start back coming around. So you start to feel those symptoms of PMS that you have before your period is coming. Your body is getting ready to shed the lining. So you're usually a little bit more tired, usually a little bit more anxious. Your emotions, depending on how you are when it comes to PMS or PMDD, or some people don't have any kind of surge of emotions or have like behaviors when they get ready to start their period. It just kind of depends on you. We'll just let you know kind of how your emotions go. But typically, we at least are collectively really exhausted. Like for me personally, during that phase of my menstrual cycle, I am like a narcoleptic. Between that phase and my period phase, I cannot stay awake to save my life. It is so tired. It's like for 2 weeks, I'm exhausted. I really do. I'm one of those people. I don't know if there are other women who might get a little bit longer than a week or a little bit longer than a few days, but I get like a few days to a week sometimes, just before the energy levels just like, all right.
Yeah. No, I feel that. And a question as you were talking that came to mind, because I have an upcoming episode talking about birth control. And I remember reading a book probably a year ago, a couple of months ago, and I forgot the name of the book, but that book basically was saying that if someone is on birth control, then it's essentially impossible or hard to even cycle sync. Is that correct? If someone who's on birth control, I need to know. What I'm saying I want to practice cycle sync is so I can make sure that I'm working at my peak throughout each phase. If I'm on birth control, could I actually try to incorporate cycle syncing into my routine or no?
I wouldn't say no or it's impossible. I think the reason why people say you shouldn't cycle sync when you're on birth control is because technically the birth control is kind of like a pseudo period. And that's even if you're having a period during the menstrual cycle, because a lot of them make you not have a period. And so that kind of, your body, but you don't know all of the phases, really how your menstrual cycle is, because the birth control is kind of throwing it off a little bit. I wouldn't let that stop me from trying to practice, especially if you're somebody who wants to get off birth control. So you kind of need a start in prepping yourself to wean yourself off, because that was something that I had to do. I had to start doing stuff to prep myself to get off birth control before I actually did it.
I'm curious. So stuff like what? I'm sorry to cut you off, but like stuff like what you did when you were thinking, like somebody listening, even for myself, if you're thinking I'm getting off of birth control, like what did you do as far as that when it came to trying to get to the point of cycle syncing and being consistent?
So I started with food, because diet is always the hardest, right? So I started there, and I started to not eat certain things that I felt I was going to be kind of hard for me to give up. Like I stopped with red meats. I wasn't a person who ate a lot of sugar or like drank a lot of liquor or sweets or anything, or like sweets or anything like that. But there were some points in times, like especially when my period is coming, I crave chocolate or I crave donuts or something like that. So I had to start figuring out what to eat that was going to subside the cravings before my period would get ready to come. I had to start incorporating more of like raw foods, like raw
Mm,
veggies, and really start to eat them on a more regular basis because I'll eat them because I love veggies, but regularly, just like eating for the most part raw veggies or just veggie plates in general, I had to
mm,
really kind of like start weaning myself off of that. And then I knew I was going to have to stop eating cheese, dairy as a whole, but really cheese. Cheese was really what had the hold on me. Everything else in the dairy family was okay.
I'm not there yet. I can't.
And see, that's how I was. And I was like, oh God, it's going dairy is the hard. I think dairy is the hardest to give up, especially cheese. I think that's the hardest part to give up when it comes to trying to change your diet because we almost put cheese on everything.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So that was the hardest. But once I started to get comfortable and used to eating a certain way, even if it wasn't every day, just for the
Yeah.
most part, so it wouldn't be as hard to do once I got off of birth control because I was so afraid of having a period when I wasn't on birth control, even though the periods that I was having during taking birth control were 90 days for 9 months out of the year. I was more
Mm,
afraid of the periods that I was going to have not on birth control, and they were probably going to last 7 to 8 days, and that's still
mm.
long, but
Yeah.
compared to 90 days, 7 days ain't
7 days. Yeah. 'Cause
nothing.
792 is very, very far. Like,
Yeah.
we'll take that. But now we're on the topic of nutrition. So I've seen in different articles, different books that nutrition plays or dieting plays a important or key role when it comes to an individual who may want to cycle sync. Again, we mentioned the different phases of the menstrual cycle. We talk about where our emotions are at different phases, but are there any specific foods or dietary changes that will help someone who's wanting to cycle sync? Because I know you said when you're trying to get off of birth control, you try to eat less and less of certain food, but if you're off and you are practicing cycle syncing in your day-to-day life, like, are there any specific food we should be focusing on, maybe during our period or luteal phase, whatever the case may be?
Yes, so during each phase, there are certain types of foods that you should be eating that'll help to support you emotionally, when it comes to your stress levels, when it comes to, especially if you have like endometriosis or maybe like fibroids, sometimes
Mhm.
you get those sharp pains like throughout the day. It'll kind of help starting to subside those, just depending on what part of the menstrual phase you are in your cycle. So like during your period, the most times depending, and I said this all the time, try not to eat anything heavy during your period.
Mm.
We don't really think about how food really plays a part when it
Mm.
comes to like how it affects our bodies during our period and what it means for our bodies to have to shed the
You
lining.
tell us, honey.
And so when you're getting ready to have your period, when you're in the period phase, try to eat healthy. Your water intake should definitely increase because that helps to not only kind of subside cramping that you have, whether that's cramping in your abdomen or like leg pain or like back pain. It'll start to really help the blood circulate a little better in your body
Mm.
if you increase your water intake during your period and kind of right before your period as well. Because a lot of times we drink a lot of things that have sugar in it. So increase your water intake. Don't drink nothing but water, honestly. It's really what you
Right.
should be drinking. Like, don't drink anything but water. But you can also eat and consume things that are high in iron, like spinach or like green leafy vegetables. You need to eat things that are rich in magnesium because usually when our
Mm.
period is coming, our magnesium levels kind of drop a little bit. So you need to eat
Mm.
foods that are like rich in magnesium and have like good fiber counts to it because those are going to be the kind of things that'll help your body to detox the lining even more. And it kind of helps to make it a little easier.
Mm.
Try not to eat a lot. Now, eat enough, but don't eat a whole lot because you have to remember your body has to pass it. And I think that's
Mm.
what we forget when it comes to our
Okay.
period. We
Right.
have those period pools, and they are
Mm-hmm.
horrible. They are
Okay.
horrible, and and part of that, and part of the reason why they're so horrible and so painful is because of what we eat right before our period comes and right during our period.
I didn't think about it. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
And a lot of times we're eating normally. We don't really
Yeah.
change it because we're not thinking about it like that. But your body is trying to pass all the stuff that you had already ate during the month. It's passing
Mm.
the lining, and that's passing the stuff that you're eating while you're on your period. So you got to think about all that. That's why I say don't eat a lot of heavy foods.
Because for me, when I'm on my period, pizza is my favorite food.
Mm-hmm.
I'll eat it every day if I could, but I'm trying to be healthy or
Mm-hmm.
in life. But for some reason, what I've been noticing is that whenever I'm on my cycle, on my period, I crave salty food.
Mm-hmm.
But then sometimes my go-to is going to be pizza because it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to like make it and stand over
Yeah.
the stove doing whatever. But I've been realizing that I've been craving salty food. Whereas I know for some menstruators, they may tend to crave sweet. So is there like some sort of correlation there that why am I whoever listening if you're also a person that may crave more like on the savory side versus sweet? Because growing up I've had friends who I need to have some chocolate or ice cream, something that's really sweet.
Mm-hmm.
But for me it's always been something that's salty.
Yeah, I'm in the salty phase.
So is there like a correlation to that or is just like the genetic makeup from a person or it's just it happens?
I think it just happens. I think for me the correlation becomes sort of spiritual
Mm.
because I'm like you. I always crave salty.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's some chips, I
Yes.
get some pretzels. Like I just need to taste like literally the salt
Mm-hmm.
on something. But I have had times where I crave sweets and I wanted like Krispy Kreme donuts and
Mm.
chocolate and just chocolate bars and chocolate with almonds and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I think spiritually, when you're craving more of the sugary foods, there's kind of some kind of emotional distress that's going on. Like we're
Mm.
kind of craving for love, or we're kind of craving for like some acceptance, or craving for some kind of intimacy, so to speak. And when you're craving more of the saltier foods, I think that's more of a correlation of not that you are desiring or looking for love, but sort of when that emotion that comes with love or intimacy, that you're
Mm.
kind of pushing it away.
That's interesting. I never, to be honest, would have thought to even think that, but that's an interesting take. I love that. That's crazy. So when someone is craving sweets, it's because they're desiring some sort of love or affection or
Mm-hmm.
intimacy, and then for the salt, now we're trying to push that away. Is what you're
Mm-hmm.
saying. That's that is. I learned something today. I mean, I'll be honest. That was something that I did not know. So I guess I got to look into myself. No, like why am I pushing away?
What are you trying to avoid?
What am I trying to avoid? But I do want to ask for those listening, what are some ways or strategies that they can use or some tips for incorporating cycle syncing? So at the end of this episode, they can say, okay, you know what, beginning of my next cycle, I'm going to make sure maybe I'm tracking, maybe you can touch on tracking your
Mm-hmm.
cycle and then ways in which they can optimize and, put it into their routine. Because everybody know they have a period, I'm bleeding. But
Mm-hmm.
again, people are not counting or tracking to say, okay, within the next 2 to 7 days or after that is going to be this phase, that phase. So how, I guess, one can track their cycle and then also incorporate the cycle syncing in so they can know, okay, on this day, I'm going to work out XYZ because I'm in my period phase or follicular phase and these different things. How can we track that and also, incorporate cycle syncing into our everyday lives?
So you can either use apps or use a journal. I suggest writing it down so that way you can start to really become familiar with your menstrual cycle and getting more in tune with your body because your menstrual cycle doesn't stay the same. Like where it is now isn't where maybe in 6 months your menstrual cycle is going to be. You have your period. You're used to having your period at one particular week during every month, and then as the months go on, your period will start on a different day. Maybe it'll start like 3 days later. So your cycle might be becoming longer or it might be becoming. So start tracking. I would suggest writing it down. And starting with your period is going to be the easiest because you have a physical indicator that you're in that phase. So a lot of women don't really track their period. Some of them don't really know when it's going to start. It's like they could have the same symptoms every month. That's going to let them know their period is coming, but it's not really registering that they're having the same symptoms every month. And so if you start to really track your menstrual cycle and every month write out, okay, I started my period this day and then my period ended this day, and count after your period's over, count those days so that you'll know which phase you're in. It'll start to make you more aware And so once you start to become more aware, it'll get a little easier to kind of be on a track to cycle sync. Because once you start incorporating diet changes and to be consistent with diet changes, it's going to be important for you to be aware of what phase you're in when you're trying to figure out like what dietary needs you might want to do. And it needs to be like you need to have been journaling and tracking your menstrual cycle enough time so when you're thinking about it, you don't have to refer to your paperwork as much. It's kind of like, okay, my period's going to start here. And then from there, once you know when your period's going to start, you can really just count. You can just count the days within the menstrual cycle. So, and I didn't say this in the beginning, but how you count the days of your menstrual cycle is your menstrual cycle you start counting the day after your period ends until the day your next period will begin. And that is how you know how many days is within your menstrual cycle. And so for me, I have a period app. I use Clue. Clue is, for the most part, Clue is pretty spot on, but I still count the days. And so Clue will have a projected date of when my period is going to start. And instead of me just looking at the projected date of when my period is going to start and just saying, okay, my period is going to start this day, I go back and I count from when the last day my period ended up until when it says it's going to start, and I see how many days it's in between that. My period is on a 24-day cycle. Clue predicts my period to be like on a 22 or 23-day cycle. And so in the app, my period is supposed to start earlier, a couple days earlier than it really is going to start. But that's because I've counted the cycle, so I know really what day my period is going to start on. And so once you get used to being able to track how long the menstrual cycle is, then it gets easier to know which phase you're in. And then once that becomes easier, you'll really be able to know which phase you're in based on your emotional state and based on your energy levels. So I use me as an example. After my period, we go to the follicular phase. During that phase, my period is 5 days. So maybe in the maybe by the 8th or 9th day of my follicular phase, I'm starting to get my energy back. So I'm starting to be able to be up all day, and I feel like I need to take a nap. Like it's just like I gotta sleep. I gotta take a nap. Okay, I can fight through the nap. I'm usually able to like get up early in the morning and start cleaning and start doing stuff. It's like I'm like Energizer Bunny. I'm getting back to my Energizer Bunny kind of phase when I'm there. By the time we get to like day 9 of the menstrual cycle, and so in that phase for me, I'm eating more foods that are kind of like richer in protein. And what I mean by that is like vegetables, more of like fruits, more stuff that's going to help to boost my energy because I'm coming off of my period. But when it comes to like exercising and trying to figure out what I need to do during my follicular phase of my menstrual cycle, I pole dance. And so I don't really have as much wiggle room as if I were to like be going to the gym. But during that phase, I can always tell which phase of my cycle I'm in, depending on how much I sweat in pole class. It's crazy. So during my follicular phase and my ovulation phase, those 2 weeks are going to be my best week of pole. I don't sweat a lot. Yeah, I don't sweat a lot because my period has gone off. So my body temperature is back regulated because when my period is coming and during my luteal phase, my body temperature it just starts going up and down. And I think it's I was on Lupron. It's a chemo treatment for endometriosis. Yeah. So that I think I still have hot flashes it's a side effect from the Lupron. So I think I still have hot flashes from it. But that's during my period and my luteal phase is when my body temperature is all out of whack. And so I sweat a lot more during my period and I sweat a lot more right before my period is coming. And so during the follicular ovulation phase is when I have the most energy. And so I can really, really like do some pole tricks and like really do some stuff. And so during those phases is when your energy is more increased. So like doing HIIT workouts, doing like strengthening workouts, like those are the best times to be doing those. But like during your luteal phase, when you get ready to go back into your period phase, if you didn't get pregnant, is when your energy levels are going to start to drop. And you're going to want to exercise, especially if you're like one of those kind of people that like made a dedication and you're committed, so you're gonna do it, but you're not gonna feel like it. And so sometimes, depending on what kind of exercising you already do, you can do something that's kind of a little lower flow, something that's like a little bit more moderate, but still giving your body movement. But like during your period, that's when you want to. Me personally, I don't do anything during my period. Don't ask me to move. Don't ask me to go nowhere. Don't ask me to do nothing. I'm going to sleep. But if you want to exercise during your period, I would suggest doing stuff like restorative yoga or like something that's like low flow, where you can move your body a little bit, but not not a whole lot of movement. Just really movement that's gonna really low stress movement, and movement that's gonna really give you kind of more of a mindful impact. Because when you're doing like mindful kind of yoga, or when you're doing mindful exercise practices, it helps you to become more aware of the space, which in turns will help you to start becoming more aware in your everyday life. And that's the whole point, is for you to be aware. And so the more you are aware, the more you are in tune with your body. So when something happens, like if you're having a good day and then all of a sudden you get hit with
it's crazy.
You just get angry all of a sudden.
Yeah. Emotions. You can't pinpoint, why am I upset? You're asking yourself, who did what? And then you're trying to find somebody to blame, when it's just
And see, the first thing you should be saying to yourself is, damn, what's today? What day my period coming?
Yeah.
Because that's the first thing I do now. Like, if I feel an emotion, if it wasn't in a situation that caused the emotion, it's just nowhere. The first thing I do is ask myself, dang, how many more days I got to my period? And then I go look at the app, and then I go look and see. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm ovulating this week. That's why I feel like that. Like, or sometimes we have those like heightened emotions, like sexually heightened emotions, that you don't know where it comes from.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, it's probably because you're ovulating.
To ovulate,
Yeah, we too busy doing stuff that we're not even aware of, like why it's happening. And then we don't even question, like, oh.
Yeah. We just go about our business thinking, it's normal.
Yeah.
It's just hormones. But yet, again, it's important for us to know. Again, when we go to the doctors, they'll ask you, when was your last menstrual cycle? There's a reason why they ask. And I think for us, we have to ensure that we're in tune. It's a way for us to be in tune with our bodies. So like you just mentioned, let's say you're overly emotional. Where am I in my cycle? We figure that out. So I think it's very important that we really and truly stay abreast, even if we have the apps, because I have the apps too. But I also write it down, because I just need to make sure that, if I gotta go to the doctor, I can say, well, this is what my calculation is saying versus the app. Because sometimes, as much as the apps are usually pretty accurate, at least in my experience, again, my thing is technology does not belong to us in that regards, whereas my phone can be broken. Something they can just do whatever they want to do. But once I have my period journal or that login, I can be able to better explain why something is probably off with me. Because I feel the same way. Sometimes I'm like, okay, why am I crying? I mean, I'm not really a crier. I can watch, like, I'm watching a TV show, I'm going to cry. I can't help myself. Like, the simplest thing sometimes will get me emotional. But I can often tell when it's that time, because emotions are just much more heightened. So then I can kind of control, you know what, Tanya, you don't need to cry for this, because it's just a TV show, it's just a movie. But sometimes the tears just come and you just can't help it. You get that good cry, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait, what's going on here? Then the very next day, or something, even the same day for me, here comes Miss Period on her way, making her grand entrance, So it's very
I am the exact same. I cry at TV shows too. I'm with the same TV shows too. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen and just still be crying. But I am very much so like that, because for me, I'm not one of those people that get like angry or like or irritated when my period is coming, but I get very emotional and I cry a lot. And that's usually how I know that my period is coming. Because for now, I know when my period is coming, but it's not a thought for me anymore. A lot of times we're anxious when our periods get ready to come, like we're kind of bracing ourselves for it. It's not even a thought. It's not even a thought anymore. It's like, oh dang,
it's gonna come.
Oh God, my period. I ain't even thought about it. My period gonna come. Like, it's not even thought. But that is the indicator for me, though, that girl, your period finna come, because I cry at the drop of a dime.
No, me too. I can see somebody crying. I am going to cry. Like,
Literally,
it's just, I can't help it. But
literally,
you just know a particular
yeah.
cry means that it's time for your period. Like, it's a different feeling.
And
Like,
you can't even stop to
it's
cry. And it's an afterthought. After it's like, oh
yeah.
yeah, my period is about to come. That's
Like
how you cry.
me and my life cycle. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
did you just come last week? Because for
Yep.
some reason, I don't know about you, but my periods seem to be coming a little bit too often for me. Granted, it's this 28 day, but for some reason, I don't know if time is moving or I don't know what's going on. But I'm looking at the app this morning and I'm like, wait, how am I 8 days away? Like, didn't you just come last week? But again, timing on me, just not even thinking
You
that,
blink.
wow, the time actually went by.
You
So it's
blink
that time
twice.
again. You blink. Yeah, it's crazy. But again, it's just all about being in tune with your body. That's how we're able to maybe even find some sort of issues with our reproductive health system when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to that. Like for you talk about, and I want, if you don't mind, you can share a little bit about your endo journey and what made you decide to like cycle sync. But that's when we know that something is off. We're not only looking for missed period
Mm-hmm.
to identify it as pregnancy.
Yep.
Again, of course, that'd be the first thing many of us, would want to think about. Okay, it could be pregnancy. Of course, you take a pregnancy test, then you're going to be like, okay, it's just late. It's just stress.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I think for me, it's just how you know that when your body's off. If you are
Yeah.
that in tune with your body, especially when it comes to your cycle, when something is wrong. Okay, I have a missed period this month, but then the other month there's another period, or I'm
Mm-hmm.
having like heavy flow. It's just like a lot. So with you and your experience going through endometriosis, is that one of the reasons why you decided to do cycle sync? How do you even combat that? Or what did you do? Or what were the signs for you to know that something was not right when it comes to your cycle?
Yeah, first off, let me say, doctors will make you feel like you're crazy
Okay.
when you
Speak on it.
go through explaining what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
You are not, you know exactly what you're going through. Let me say that first.
Yep.
So for me, my periods have always been bad. Ever since I've had a period, I've never had a period that was shorter than 7 days, and that
Right.
made me have to not miss school or not miss work. I always had debilitating periods, and so it took me a while for something to really click, that something was kind of off, because that was all I knew, was having a bad period.
Right.
One of the signs that made me finally say, because I had seen many doctors and I had told them about my period. I had tried
Mm-hmm.
birth control. I tried birth control once in high school for like 6 months. It didn't do anything. And then I tried birth control again my freshman year of college for a year. And I was on the shot, so I didn't have a period for a year. But my mom was so afraid of the side effects that she made me get off of it. And it
Right.
was like, no, this is not going to work. And so for a while, my period it was literally always the same every single month. Nothing varied from the script until I got about maybe like 20, I think it was like 24.
Wow.
And I couldn't walk one particular period. And I had always had I always had leg pain. Like my thighs always felt like it was boulders sitting on top of them. But I had never really had like literal trouble walking. It'd be like, I feel like
Mm.
be hunched over and have to walk, but that's really just because I'm cramping and my legs hurt. But not just like I get up and then I just fall. Like
Right.
I couldn't walk. And I was like, okay, yeah, something not right now. Like, now
Yeah.
y'all done told me, every doctor I've seen has told me my period is just bad. It's just how it is. I could try birth control to regulate it, or it'll just get easier as I get older or when I become pregnant. But that's when I knew like something was wrong. And so I saw a doctor, told her about my period symptoms, and she prescribed me codeine. And
Cool.
I was not familiar with narcotics, like not those
Mm-hmm.
kind of narcotics. I was just used to taking ibuprofen, but I was taking ibuprofen like the 800 milligrams. I would be
Mm-hmm.
taking like 1600 milligrams like at the time. And so for me, 1600 milligrams, don't do that. Maybe
That's
I say that. Do not do that. But I didn't know no better. I was just trying to get rid of the pain. And
yeah, yeah.
and so I was prescribed the codeine. They did not explain to me how to really like take it. And they were like
Right.
6 milligrams, and I took 6 of them, thinking that 36 milligrams is like nothing. I do like 1800 in my sleep. Like, what is 36? And woke up and was almost overdosed. And when I went
Ooh.
back to the doctor's office, the doctor who had prescribed the codeine was not there. So I saw someone else and told him everything that had been going on. And he gave me a pamphlet and said, I think you have endometriosis. Never heard of it before. And he told me I was going to have surgery to find out if I have endometriosis. They don't have like ways where you can find out during an ultrasound or X-ray or MRI, you have to have surgery for it. And at the same time, I had 2 ovarian cysts that were the same size as my uterus. And my uterus was the size of an orange, and it was supposed to be the size of a lemon because I've never been pregnant. I had kids before. So I had my surgery for the removal of the ovarian cysts and found out during that surgery that I was stage 1 endometriosis. And from there, I tried different birth control treatments. I already hated birth control. I did not want to do it, but that's how they try to regulate the growth of endometriosis, because what it is when we have our periods and our lining is shedding, for us with endometriosis, our endometrium-like lining sheds. And so it's shedding in the inside of our bodies. And then that tissue, that shedding is going to sit and grow into blood. It's going to turn into blood. And it's just going to start attaching all of your organs. So it can make your organs stick together, kind of like a spider web.
Yeah.
So for me, I tried the different birth controls. I tried different birth control pills, the shot. I tried Lupron, which is a chemotherapy treatment that they give men with prostate cancer. And when I was trying the Lupron, I was not taking hormonal replacement therapy, which I wasn't aware of at first. But because I was not on hormonal replacement therapy, I kind of went into menopause and had menopausal symptoms. So I had like the hot flashes and night sweats. And I didn't have a libido anymore. And I was like 25 and didn't want to be touched ever again in my life. It was horrible. And so my period started to be longer and longer. So I started from having like breakthrough bleeding, which is kind of what they call spotting, but longer spotting. Not, most times when you spot for like a day or 2. But when you break through bleed, you kind of spot for like a week. And then the spotting kind of starts to look more kind of like a little bit of the beginning of a period. And so I was having that for like 3 weeks, and then it turned into a month, and then a breakthrough bleeding turned into a full period for a month. And that led me to having periods for 90 days for 9 months out of the year. And it was like that for 4 years, and tried all different kind of treatments, and none of it was working, and was going to do an ablation and a hysterectomy, and decided against it. And my doctor suggested that I try holistic medicine, and I was like, okay, and got off birth control, changed my diet. I started juicing a lot more instead of eating solid foods, because at that time I couldn't hold solid foods. Everything I ate, I threw up. So I started juicing, try to help me get some kind of nutrition. And the juicing really helped, I will say. I don't think people really, smoothies is one thing, but juicing is another.
Yeah, it's totally different.
And I think people think they're the same, and they are not. Juicing, you get more of the nutritional components of whatever it is you're drinking, versus a smoothie is just being blended up.
And break down a lot.
Yeah, and break down. And so juicing really not only gave me a lot of energy, but it helps with like skin wise.
I feel like it makes you feel kind of lighter too, for some reason, because it cleans you out in a way that you didn't imagine it was going to.
It
from
does.
juicing.
Especially the green juices and celery juices and beet juices. I love beet juice. Those like really, really help with just cleansing out a lot of the body and detoxing. And I started yoni steaming. I put myself on a yoni steam schedule. This is how I ended up getting my holistic practitioner's license.
Right.
And I worked through a lot of trauma. I tell a lot of people that we hold a lot of trauma in our wombs.
Yeah, speaking of that, especially when it comes to our period. Yeah, honey.
Yeah, we hold a lot of trauma in our womb spaces, and that in turn causes reproductive issues. And so because we either don't really have the time to like really sit and dive into emotions, or because they be too intense to really like dive through and like dissect and digest for real, we don't really heal a lot of the traumatic situations that we have been through. And so that causes us to have reproductive disorders and discourse in our womb spaces. And so I had learned I started doing womb meditations during my yoni steams, and then I started to like really work on forgiving myself for feeling guilty for not being able to like naturally conceive. I feel like I spoke it upon my life to not have kids naturally. I felt guilty for not being in a relationship and not feeling like I was not going to find nobody to love me through all the stuff that I was going through.
Yeah.
I started working through all of that. I started working through like parental traumas, relationship traumas, generational traumas, at least the ones I know of.
Okay. Yeah.
And started just like really, really diving more into myself and learning more about my womb and how I think of my womb as it helps me to think of her this way, but I think of my womb as a separate person. And so when I
I
get
like
ready
that.
to do stuff, I feel like in my mind, my womb is sitting next to me telling me, girl, you supposed to be eating that. You know that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't really want that.
So it's like she's holding you accountable, even
Yeah,
though you're
yeah,
not actually a person.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what I was gonna say. Like, learning about my reproductive health and like really healing myself has really led me to like learning how to for real be accountable. Whether that's just when it comes to my womb health or just like any type of life
Mm-hmm.
situation in general, because I now can understand the difference between blaming the disease versus understanding what did I do to help the disease get
I
inflamed
like that.
instead of subsiding it.
Yeah.
And so now, if I overindulge in something and I know I wasn't really supposed to, and then it's like I might get some pains or like something from that, well, I can say to myself, well, Sam, you know, you had no reason to eat that. So, I mean, what you thought? What would you think was going to happen? And it
Yeah.
just helps me to be able to say, like, don't eat that. Don't do this. This is not the week that we should be doing it. Like your period coming next week. Rethink
Yeah.
what you're gonna do. And so that helps. That's really helped me to become more accountable and more aware, and being able to be more aware about my menstrual cycle and like where I am when it comes to feeling certain emotions or
Mm-hmm.
like energy surges or anything like that. Just to know like where I am and how that's gonna help me.
No, I love that. And as we get ready to wrap up, I do want to talk about really quickly how just hearing you, like I said, I'm always emotional too, so just hearing your story too. If you see me crying, if you hear my voice cracking up, don't laugh at me.
No.
But how, like, talk to us about the importance of even having these conversations around women's health. Because again, a menstrual cycle, essentially, for me, I think it's just the tip of the iceberg because, you go to puberty. So at some point, you're going to have a menstrual cycle if you are blessed, depending on whatever may happen to you from a health standpoint. And on a previous episode, I was talking to a doctor and we were talking about at a certain age, sometimes, especially in our culture, parents, they shy away from having certain conversations. So,
Mm-hmm.
like for me growing up, I've had classmates or friends who had severe cramps when they're on their cycle. But for some reason, we just thought, oh, you know what, it's normal for them, but not normal for me because I may have a 5-day period or 5-day cycle. They may have 8 to 10 days. And then during that 8 to 10 days, they're puking, they can't go to school. There's so many different
Mm-hmm.
things. But then we're not thinking that it could be something deeper than what it is. We're just thinking, you know what, having a painful period is the norm because you're supposed to have cramps. Because somewhere in the midst of time,
Mm-hmm.
that's what we were taught. Oh, you have period cramps. Okay, moving on. But we're not understanding or realizing that it could be something that's going on internally that needs to be
Mm-hmm.
addressed before we get to a certain age or before it's too late sometimes, if you want to say that. So how important is it for us to be having these open conversations surrounding, women's health, reproductive health? Because again, for me, I think the menstrual cycle is the tip of the iceberg, but we got to go deeper. But for some reason in society, again, we're just picking and choosing what we're talking about. we are picking and choosing how, or maybe, I don't want to say pick and choose, but it's just not talked about in the open enough. Because, we're here, you're the end
Mm-hmm.
warrior queen, but you're doing your part
It's
within
so
the
taboo.
community. But it's still so taboo that sometimes for me, I don't necessarily say I feel ashamed because I'm more comfortable now, but it's just, sometimes you feel defeated because you're doing
Mm-hmm.
all this to get the conversation going, but then there's like some sort of pushback because, what, it's not the norm. What are you talking about periods here? What are you talking about endometriosis, PCOS? Why? We don't care about that
Mm-hmm.
essentially, but you still want to police my body or my reproductive system for some reason. So it's just like, how important should we be having these conversations like what we're having right now and just going forward? Like, why do you think, of course, I know why it's important, but for those listening who may just be saying, oh, I have a period every month,
Mm-hmm.
that's fine, I don't want to think about it. Why is it important for us to be having these open conversations with each other, but also with our health practitioners as well? Because I'm telling you, we can't talk about holistic health
At all.
if we're not having these conversations.
First of all, it's super important because it's almost like each one teach one.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, everybody's different, so everybody's bodies are different. Everybody's
Right.
body has different things that they go through during their period or during their menstrual cycle. But in some kind of way, they kind of all correlate and connect. I think trying to bridge the gap between the past generations and us is like a big thing because they were taught to not talk about it. And then they weren't really educated about different reproductive diseases either. So for them, a bad period is just kind of just always what it was. It wasn't really no explanation past that. Then you might have got fibroids. That might have been the best explanation you got past that. But that was really it. And you'd be surprised at how many women that are in older generations who don't know anything about the menstrual cycle either. They think the period is your menstrual cycle. And so that's really where you got to start. You really do have to start at teaching the menstrual cycle and what it is and how it's going to affect you and your hormones and stuff like that. And then once we get an understanding of the menstrual cycle and how it works and how it plays a role in our everyday lives, because our hormones are always constantly going up and down, then you can start to kind of understand and learn more about reproductive disorders and diseases and like how that affects your hormones and how diet plays a role into being able to kind of heal yourself from some of the symptoms of either reproductive issues or just your period in general. If you have a debilitating period, we have these conversations and it's like people hear it. It's kind of like it goes on one ear, not the other. Unless you say something that's like shock value. And then at that point, it's like, okay, yeah, we'll listen. Because it's like, well, how you going through all that? Like, I ain't never heard nobody going through, you know what I'm saying, that kind of thing. Because a lot of people shame others for your symptoms during your period.
Yes, that is so
how
true.
Hard, how like difficult of a period that you're having. Like, they're just quick to say you lying.
I'm glad you said that.
It's like, who want to make this up? Who
wants to be in pain? Who wants to lie?
Who really sat here and made up this whole fictional story about I'm over here feeling like I'm dying and in my last breath and I can't breathe and I'm bleeding all over the place. Like, who really would sit there and make all that up?
I'm glad. I'm so glad you said that. Not to cut you off, because it's really a thing that there's a stigma, there's a shame for people who are in pain, who just cannot be bothered or cannot do anything. Like you said, when I'm on my period, can I move around? Yes, but for me, I rather lay in bed, watch TV, be cozy, to be comfortable. And I shouldn't be shamed or feel guilty for doing that. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because too many times we shame individuals who have periods that are super heavy or super painful and these different things. And we should just understand that. And I think sometimes we lack that understanding. We got to make a mockery of the person first before realizing how severe their symptoms are. So I'm glad you mentioned about period shame. Let's just stop it. We're all out here menstruating, trying our best to survive, trying our best to heal our bodies, trying to be in tune with our bodies so we can know what's going wrong if something feels off. And I think that's one way you can do when you track that cycle to see, okay, this month it was 8 days long. Let's see what happened next month. It's okay, it's been 7 or it's been 14 days. You know, I've known individuals who will bleed for 14 days and we're like, that's not normal. And then when they go to their care provider, that's when they find out that it's something than just like an abnormal period. Yeah, you know, so it's like we got to really be in tune and get these conversations going out from the time we know that we have individuals who are going through or at the adolescent stage. Because again, we like to shun them. Oh, no, they're going to get to that point. Let's just have the open conversation now so we can all be comfortable having the conversations. It becomes a norm. And I think that's how we make things become the norm, and we're not afraid to have these conversations. Because why are we afraid to talk about periods? It's something that happens to us. We can't hear.
None of us would be here if we didn't have periods. Exactly. So it really shouldn't be that taboo of a thing to talk about. Being able to open the conversation at home is going to be the biggest start, because a lot of times, like, our parents don't really want to, you know, we get just like how you said earlier, when you start your period, you get told how to use a pad. You get told now you can get pregnant. Don't be out here having sex. And that's really about it. You know, you're going to have a period once a month. And that's really about it. You don't really get told anything else. And so we need to, I think if we started in the home and start being able, as I'm not a parent, but as parents, being able to, or not even just parents, like parental figures in children's lives. Like, you know, because I have younger cousins and I got help guide her through her period. So being able to like start talking to them about it so it doesn't feel as shameful, because they don't feel shame about it. You know, we all know how we felt when we started our period, especially when you started your period out in public. and we all know how we felt. We had our first period, and so
no, you're right. Because I always say, for me, I have period trauma. Because there was one point in time where I had my period at school, messed my uniform up. Well, I went to an all-girls school, but then my friends, luckily we went to the bathroom, washed the skirt out, everything. But from since then, I always say that I experience period trauma in the sense that I'm always afraid that I'm going to have a leak here, or even in my big age, I'm going to be wearing 2 panties. I don't care if you listen to me, judge me. I don't care, but I'm going to put on 2 underwear because it what makes me feel safe and comfortable when it comes to my cycle. I don't have a extra heavy flow if you want to go there, but for some reason, that one time at school traumatized me.
That's all you need.
And that's okay.
All you need is one time.
Right.
All you need is one trigger, and then it's just gonna make a trajectory of how you carry your period on from then on.
So that's why we have to have these conversations. Like, it's gonna happen. So you may leak, you may mess yourself up, but at the end of the day, you shouldn't
inevitable.
You shouldn't be ashamed.
It's inevitable. You're not gonna go through all these years of having a period and not have one leak. Accident. It's gonna. Sometimes it happens in public. Sometimes it happens at home while you by yourself.
When I'm home going to bed, I'm putting the towel down because again, you just never know.
So you just never know. One thing I will say before we wrap up that'll help when it comes to like tracking your cycle and like really wanting to get into synchro cycling. While you're tracking your menstrual cycle, track the symptoms that you feel. Especially the symptoms in your luteal phase before your period is coming. Because there might be certain indicators that let you know every month that your period is about to start. Like for me, every month, either the night before my period starts or during the day of, I get a headache.
Oh my goodness,
and I can tell if my period is going to start that night or the next day, just depending on what time I get the headache. And so once I get the headache, I'm like, oh yeah, period coming tomorrow. Period finna come in a few hours, girl. Go ahead and get ready. And so if you can start to track those things about your period and the symptoms that you have right before your period is coming, then you can start to see every month which one is the one that you get that you have the most times. And in that way, you can start to know like, okay, when you get, I don't know, a sharp pain somewhere, that might be your indicator. Or if you just all of a sudden get nauseous out of nowhere, that might be your indicator. It'll help you to start being able to pinpoint when things are about to start happening, and that can help you get more in tune with your body. And that'll help with ensuring that you know which phase you're in. So that's right. I'm glad you said that. And that's a really good way for us to end this episode. But before we go, I know you gave us your barrier before, but let us know where we can find you so we can support you. And of course, we'll put all that in the show notes as well, but just tell the people where they can find you on social media and website and everything. Sell yourself. My website is SamanthaDenäe.com. You spell Denäe, Denae. My social media on Instagram, my Instagram is the same, _Samantha Denäe, Samantha Denäe on Facebook, and Samantha Denäe on Twitter as well. And on TikTok, I am the Endo Educator.
Love it. Thank you so much.
I'm sure I have a link tree. I have link trees everywhere.
We're going to put every one of them in the show notes too, because I think we're here to help each other, because there's someone evidently who will listen to this podcast like, oh, I have the symptom too. And then, we have to educate. We got to learn one community, one listener at a time. And I always say, if we're able to just help or touch one person, for me, my job is done. Because then that one person, are we going to tell the other person? And then it just trickles down into so many different things as we talk about these quote unquote uncomfortable conversation that for some reason shouldn't be uncomfortable. But definitely want to say thank you again for taking the time out of your busy day to talk to me. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to see you back here in a different capacity, because I already have an idea. So we're definitely going to be.
I was just about to say that. You can bring me back. I'll be ready.
We're definitely going to keep in touch for real. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of Tea with Tanya. If you like this episode, be sure to share it with a friend. Don't forget to follow on Instagram at Tea with Tanya Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the weekly Tea Talk newsletter. And of course, rate on Apple or Spotify and subscribe wherever you listen. See you next time. I love you for listening.